My son graduated from medical school on a Saturday in May. I was there, third row from the back because I arrived late. My shift at the laundromat ran over and the bus from Elm Street takes 40 minutes when there's traffic on the bridge. I still had detergent powder on my sleeve when I sat down. I didn't notice until the woman beside me leaned slightly away. My son crossed that stage in his white coat and I cried. Not the pretty kind. The kind where you press your lips together and your chin does that thing. It does when you've been holding something in for too long. I've been holding it in for 22 years, since the night his father left and I was standing in a kitchen with $38 in my checking account, and a 6-year-old boy asleep down the hall. I had an envelope in my purse. Inside was a deed. I'd wrapped it in brown paper, the way I wrap everything, not because I can't afford gift wrap, but because I never saw the point of spending $3 on something that gets torn off in 10 seconds. The deed was to a property on Callaway Street, a 4-unit building I'd bought 11 years ago, paid off 8 years ago. It brought in $4,100 a month. I'd been holding it aside for him since the day I signed the papers. His name was already on the amended deed. All he had to do was show up at the county recorder's office. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever given anyone. I was wrong about how he'd receive it, but I'll get to that. After the ceremony, his in-laws hosted a dinner at Hargrove Hall. It's one of those event spaces with the kind of lighting that makes everyone look like they're in a magazine, chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars, a dress code that nobody states out loud, but everyone understands. I wore my navy blue dress, the one I bought for my sister's funeral 6 years ago. It still fit. I'd ironed it that morning between the 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock wash cycles. My daughter-in-law's mother, Constance, greeted me at the entrance. She had that smile that sits just above the eyes, but never quite reaches them. She was wearing pearls. Real ones? I could tell. I used to clean the jewelry cases at Harmon's department store for 4 years before the laundromat. I know the difference between a pearl that was grown and one that was made. "Oh, you made it," she said, like I was a stray cat that had wandered onto a clean porch. My son came to find me 20 minutes into the cocktail hour. He looked wonderful. Taller somehow, in the way that accomplishment makes people look. His wife, Priscilla, was beside him, her hand tucked in the crook of his elbow like she'd always been there. "Mom," he said, and kissed my cheek. "I'm so proud of you," I told him. He squeezed my hand, and I felt the envelope in my purse pressing against my hip. I waited until dinner. I didn't want to give it to him in the chaos of the cocktail hour, with waiters moving through and Constance supervising everything like she was staging a film set. I wanted a quiet moment. I should have known there wouldn't be one. Dessert had just been set down. Creme brulee. The kind with the thin burnt sugar crust that you crack with a spoon. When I reached into my purse and placed the envelope on the table in front of my son. "Something for you," I said. "Something I've been holding for a while." He looked at it. Priscilla looked at it. Constance, from 3 seats down, craned her neck. My son picked it up, turned it over. "What is this?" "Open it," I said. He slid his finger under the flap, pulled out the paper. He unfolded it slowly, the way you do when you're not sure what you're looking at. His eyes moved across the page. "Mom." His voice was careful in the way voices get careful when they don't want to cause a scene. "This is a property deed." "Yes." "To a building on Callaway Street. 4 units. It's been rented for 11 years. The tenants are good people. Long term." He set it on the table. Priscilla leaned over to look. Constance was fully turned in her chair now, pretending she wasn't listening. My son looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on his face since he was 15, and I'd packed him a lunch in front of his friends. Not anger. Something closer to embarrassment with a sharp edge underneath it. "Mom, I'm a doctor now, I know that." I mean, his voice dropped. "Priscilla's family. They've already set us up with a financial advisor. We have a portfolio. We have a plan." He glanced at his wife, then back at me. "This is..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Priscilla finished it for him, not with words but with a small sound, almost a laugh, that she caught behind her fingers. "It's a laundromat building," she said quietly. To her mother. "Rental property," I said. 4 units. Residential. Constance made that sound then. The one I'd heard from women like her my whole life. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a scoff. Something in between that's designed to land without leaving a mark. "How thoughtful," she said. "Very practical." My son folded the deed and placed it back in the envelope and set the envelope beside his dessert plate. He didn't give it back to me. He didn't tuck it in his jacket pocket. He just set it aside. The way you set aside something you're not sure what to do with. He put his arm around Priscilla. They moved to the next table to thank his attending physician for coming. I sat there with my creme brulee going cold and watched the envelope sit untouched next to his fork. I didn't cry this time. I'd already used up my tears on the ceremony. I took a car home instead of the bus, $22 I wouldn't have spent otherwise. I sat in the back seat and watched the city slide past the window, and I thought about 1997, the year I took a second job cleaning the radiology unit at St. Clement's Hospital so I could afford my son's 6th grade science camp. I thought about the winter I wore the same coat for 6 years because his winter coats needed replacing every 18 months as he grew. I thought about the envelope now sitting on a table at Hargrove Hall next to an untouched creme brulee. When I got home, I unlocked the second drawer of my filing cabinet, the one with the combination lock that I've had since 2003. Inside, organized by year, were 31 folders. Tax returns, property deeds, LLC documents, investment account statements, insurance policies. I pulled out the folder labeled Callaway Street, gift documentation. I sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours. The clock on the microwave turned from 11 to midnight to 1 in the morning. Outside, the laundromat's neon sign buzzed its usual rhythm against the dark. I could see it from my window. I'd bought the laundromat 14 years ago when the previous owner, a man named Phil who smelled like cigarettes and had bad knees, decided he was done. Everyone said it was a bad investment. Coin laundry was dying, they said. People were buying their own machines. I bought it anyway. I'd learned something from 30 years of watching how money moved. The people who told you an investment was dead were usually the people who couldn't afford to make it. The laundromat served 47 residential units within a 3-block radius, most of them renters, most of them without in-unit machines. Phil had been charging $2.25 per wash. I raised it to $2.75 in the first year, added folding service, upgraded 4 machines. By year 3, it was pulling $12,000 a month. I never told my son. I'd built the habit of silence early. When he was small, I didn't want him to feel the weight of our circumstances. When he was older, I didn't want money to soften the edges of his ambition. I wanted him to work because the work mattered, not because he had a safety net. I told myself this was wisdom. It may have been a mistake. I was still working that out. What I was certain of, sitting at that kitchen table at 1 in the morning, was this. The envelope on the table at Hargrove Hall had held 11 years of intent. And my son had set it next to his fork. I picked up my phone. I had 3 missed calls, all from the same number. Not my son. His mother-in-law, Constance. She'd called twice during the car ride home, and once while I was sitting in the dark. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the document I'd been updating for 6 years. A spreadsheet, nothing fancy, the kind you can make in 20 minutes if you know what you're doing. It listed every property I owned, every account, every LLC structure, every projected value. 14 properties, combined current market value, $4.1 million. The laundromat alone, with its equipment and lease and loyal customer base, had been appraised at $840,000 the previous spring. My son thought I owned 1 building on Callaway Street. He didn't know about the others. He didn't know about the LLC I'd set up in 1999, The one I'd used to quietly acquire properties over 2 decades while working the counter at the laundromat in a blue apron and telling people the machine in Bay 4, sometimes 8 quarters. He didn't know that the commercial strip on Devereaux Avenue, the one with the dry cleaner, the insurance office, and the small urgent care clinic that Priscilla's father had opened 3 years ago, was owned by my LLC. Let me say that again because it took me a moment to fully sit with it myself. The urgent care clinic where Priscilla's father, Dr. Randall, had built his post-retirement practice. The one he mentioned at dinner tonight as the thing he was most proud of. The one Constance had said gave him purpose. He paid rent to Hartwell Property Group. Hartwell Property Group was me. He had no idea. I closed the laptop. I made chamomile tea that I didn't drink. I went to bed at 2:30 and lay on top of the covers staring at the ceiling, listening to the laundromat sign buzz. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I want to be clear about that. I was thinking about a 6-year-old boy asleep down the hall in 1997, and a woman standing in a kitchen with $38 and a decision to make. I was thinking about what that woman had built and whether it had been worth it. I was thinking that my son had set an envelope next to his fork and walked away. In the morning, I called my attorney. Her name is June. She's been handling my property matters for 16 years, long enough that she stopped being surprised by anything I bring her. I told her what happened. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the reasons I've kept her for 16 years. When I finished, she said, "What do you want to do?" "I want to review the Callaway Street deed transfer," I said. "It has his name on it. I need to know if I can amend it back before he files anything." She was quiet for a moment. "He hasn't filed it?" "I don't believe so. He left it on the table." "Then it's still yours until he records it. We can void the amendment." "Good. And I want to review the Devereaux Avenue leases." "All of them." Another pause. June is not a person who shows her feelings, but I heard something in that pause. "All of them," she confirmed. "Yes, and I want the clinic's lease flagged for standard review at renewal." "Which is when?" 14 months. "I'll be in touch before then." "Before I let you go," she said, "are you sure about the Callaway deed? That's 11 years of—" "I know what it is," I said. She didn't push further. "That's the other reason I've kept her." 2 weeks after the graduation dinner, my son called. I was on the floor of Bay 3 at the laundromat, replacing a drain hose that had been giving trouble for a week. I had grease on my hands and my knees were aching the way they do now in ways they didn't at 50. My phone was in my apron pocket. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I thought about the 6-year-old boy again and answered. "Mom," he said. His voice was different from the dinner, less polished. There was something tired in it. "I'm here," I said. Where are you?" "I hear machines. At the laundromat. Fixing a drain hose." "What's going on?" A pause. "I thought I should call. We haven't talked since the graduation dinner." "No," I said. "I wanted to." He stopped. He started again. "I think maybe we didn't handle the gift well. Priscilla and I talked about it and—" He stopped again. I waited. I've learned that some of the most important things people say are in the pauses, not the words. "Is it too late to look at the deed?" he finally asked. I finished tightening the clamp on the drain hose before I answered. I needed the extra few seconds. Not because I didn't know what I was going to say, because I wanted to say it steadily. "The deed has been amended back," I told him. "It's in my name now." Silence. "Mom, you left it on the table." "I know." He said it quietly. "I know I did." I stood up slowly, my knees complaining. I walked to the front of the laundromat and looked out the window at Devereaux Avenue. Across the street, 2 blocks down, I could see the small blue sign of the urgent care clinic. "I want to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to answer honestly." "Okay." "When Priscilla said what she said about the building, did you disagree with her?" The pause was longer this time. "No," he said finally. "I didn't." "That's honest," I said. "I appreciate it." "Mom, it's not that I don't value." "I know what you value," I said. I've been watching you build a life around it for 10 years. The right hospital, the right program, the right address, the right family to marry into. I never said it was wrong. I just wanted to know if it was all of you or only part of you. He didn't answer that. There's something I need to tell you, I said, about the building on Devereaux Avenue. What about it? I own it. What? I own the commercial property on Devereaux Avenue. Through my LLC, I've owned it for 9 years. There was a silence so complete I thought the call had dropped. I'm sorry. His voice was careful again, but for a different reason now. You own the building where your father-in-law's clinic is. Yes, the clinic he opened after he retired from St. Clement's. Yes, the one that... His voice changed. Mom! Does he know? Not yet. His breathing was audible. He knew what it meant. He's a smart man, my son. That's not the issue. Mom, are you planning to? I haven't decided anything, I said. I'm telling you because I think you deserve to know before he does. Why are you telling me? Because I'm not Constance, I said. I don't operate by making people feel small. And because you're my son, and whatever happens next, you should understand what's been in front of you. Your whole life that you never thought to ask about. He was quiet again. Then he said, How many buildings? 14, I said. Not including the laundromat. He made a sound I'd never heard from him before. Not surprise exactly. Something past it. 14 properties, I said. I started in 1998 with a duplex on Marsh Road, a place everyone said was a bad investment. I fixed the plumbing myself from a library book. Mom, I raised you on what was left after the mortgage, the repairs, and the taxes. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to know what it felt like to need something and work for it. I wanted you to be a person, not an heir. He was silent long enough that I counted 8 rotations of the dryer in Bay 2. I'm coming to see you, he said. I have hours at the laundromat until 6. After 6 then. I'll leave the side door unlocked. He came at 6:40. He walked through the side door of the laundromat the way he used to when he was small, with a particular kind of tentativeness that meant he wasn't sure of his welcome. He was still in his work clothes, white coat over his arm. He looked tired and younger than he had at the graduation. He sat at the small table I keep in the back room, the one where I do paperwork during slow hours. I made coffee. He wrapped his hands around the mug and looked at the filing cabinet against the wall. The one with the combination lock. He nodded at it. Is that where you keep everything? Some of it, I said. I always wondered what was in there. He paused. I thought it was tax stuff. From the laundromat. It is tax stuff, I said. All of it. Every property has its own folder. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Why didn't you tell me? I told him what I'd told myself for 20 years. About wanting him to develop character without a cushion. About wanting him to earn his ambitions rather than inherit them. And then, I said the part I hadn't let myself say out loud before. And I was afraid, I said. Of what? That it would change how you saw me, that you'd stop thinking of me as your mother and start thinking of me as a resource. He looked down at his coffee. Did I do that? He asked quietly. At the dinner. I let that sit. When he looked up, his face had changed. Not the polished medical school graduate who'd walked across that stage. Not the man with the right address and the right family. My son. The one who used to sit at this exact table at 9 years old doing homework while I did invoices, both of us working under the same lamp. I'm ashamed, he said. I know. Not just of the dinner, of the years, of never asking, of assuming your life was small because it looked small. I want to tell you something, I said. Something I should have told you years ago. I folded my hands on the table. Outside, a car went past. The laundromat sign buzzed once and settled. I was proud of every shift, I said. Every machine I fixed and every drain I snaked and every quarter I counted. Not because it was glamorous. Because it was honest. because every dollar of it was real. And it built something. 14 buildings, 67 rental units, a commercial strip, a laundromat that's been open for 14 years. I built that in the hours you didn't see, with money you didn't know existed, through decisions that everyone around me said were wrong. He was crying, my son. Quietly, the way men cry when they're trying not to. I'm sorry I set the envelope aside, he said. I know you are. I want to earn it back, he said. Whatever version of it you're willing to give. I thought about the Callaway Street deed, now in my name again. I thought about the clinic on Devereaux Avenue and the lease renewal 14 months out. I thought about Constance and her pearls and her small curling sound. The deed is mine again, I said. But that's not the thing you need to earn. What is? The right to understand what it represents. Tell me what it represents. I looked at him. 30 years, I said. 30 years of invisible work. The kind of work that people walk past without seeing. I want you to understand, really understand, what that looks like. Before I hand you anything else. He nodded. How? Come to the laundromat on Saturday morning, I said. 7 o'clock. To do what? To work. His face registered something. Not quite surprise, something more careful. I'll be here, he said. He was. 7:02, which for a man who spent his mornings on hospital rounds was essentially dawn. He came in through the side door in jeans and an old sweatshirt, looking nothing like the person at the graduation dinner. I handed him an apron. I'm not going to tell you what the next 3 Saturdays looked like in detail, because the details aren't the point. The point is this. My son spent 3 Saturdays at the laundromat. He learned how the payment system worked, how to reset a machine that had gone out of cycle, how to handle a customer who was certain she'd put money in but got nothing out. He learned that the folding service requires a certain consistency of pace, and that the pace is harder than it looks. On the 3rd Saturday, a woman came in with 4 children and a garbage bag of clothes and not quite enough quarters. My son made up the difference from his own pocket without making a production of it. He just did it and went back to folding. I watched that from across the room and felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized was still tight. He doesn't know I saw. On a Thursday evening, 6 weeks after the graduation dinner, I drove out to Devereaux Avenue. I parked across the street and sat in the car for 10 minutes, looking at the small blue sign. Dr. Randall's Clinic. 4 exam rooms, a reception desk, a small waiting area with chairs the color of sage green. I'd been in the building dozens of times over 9 years. I knew every square foot of the lease. I wasn't there for Randall. I was there to make a decision. I'd been carrying 2 options for 6 weeks. The first, raise the rent at renewal, enough to make the math uncomfortable, not vindictive, just business. The second, do nothing different. Keep the lease as it was. Let Randall retire in peace. There was a third option. It had come to me slowly, the way the best decisions do. I called June from the car. I need you to draft a letter to the Devereaux Avenue commercial tenants, I said. I'm converting the building. Converting to what? Community health clinic. Nonprofit partnership. I've been in contact with Aldridge Community Health. They've been looking for a permanent location for 3 years. June was quiet for a moment. That's a significant income change. I know. You'd be taking the building essentially off your revenue sheet. I'd be putting it on the community's balance sheet, I said. That's different. Randall's lease, she said carefully. He's been there 3 years. He'll have 12 months' notice. That's within the terms. And I'll write a referral to the hospital network if he wants to affiliate. His work is good. He should be able to land somewhere. And the other tenants? Same terms, same notice. I'll work with each of them individually. She was quiet again. Then she said, You could have done this any number of ways, Penelope. I know. You chose the one that costs you the most and benefits people who weren't particularly kind to you. I'm not doing it for them, I said. I'm doing it because the building should be doing more than generating income. It should be doing something that actually matters. June said she'd have the draft letters within the week. I drove home. The long way, past St. Lyd. Clements Hospital, where I'd cleaned the radiology unit for 4 years in the 1990s. Past Marsh Road, where I'd bought my first duplex with money. Everyone said I didn't have for a property. Everyone said was a bad idea. Past the laundromat with its buzzing neon sign, steady as a pulse. My son called as I was pulling into my parking spot. "Mom, I heard from Priscilla. Her father got a letter from the building." "I know. He's upset. He thinks it's related to the graduation dinner." "Is it?" I looked at the laundromat sign through the windshield. "Partly," I said honestly, "but not in the way he thinks. I'm not punishing him. I'm reassigning the building to something better." "What's going to happen to the clinic?" "It's going to become a community health center. Real one, sliding scale. The neighborhood it serves has one urgent care option for 11,000 residents. This will be the second." A pause. Then he said, "Oh, yes, Mom, I didn't know you were." "A lot of things," I said gently. "You didn't know a lot of things." "I'm learning," he said. "I know you are. I've been watching." He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Can I be part of it?" "The health center, when it opens." I thought about that. How it would look. His name connected to the work. How it would feel having him stand beside something I built and understand what it cost. "Show up on Saturday," I said. "We'll talk about it then." The health center opened on a Friday in November, 8 months after I'd given the letter of intent to Aldridge Community Health. November in this part of the country means gray skies and bare trees and a cold that settles in the joints by mid-morning. None of that mattered. There were families lined up before 8 o'clock. A woman with 2 small children who hadn't had a primary care provider in 3 years. A man in his 70s on a fixed income whose nearest option had been a 40-minute bus ride. A teenage girl who needed a referral that she'd been putting off for 6 months because she didn't know where else to go. My son was there. Not because I'd asked him again, but because he'd asked me if he could be. He'd reached out to the clinic director 2 months before the opening, offered to volunteer 1 Saturday a month. No fanfare, no announcement. He just showed up and asked how he could be useful. That was his choice. I don't take credit for it. But I noticed. I stood near the back of the room while the Aldridge director said some words. Something about access and equity and what it means for a community to have a resource that sees them. I wasn't listening very carefully. I was watching a woman in her 60s, a home health aide named Ruth Ann, sit down for the first time in years in an exam room that was for her. My son caught my eye from across the room. He nodded once. I nodded back. Constance was not there. I hadn't expected her to be. Randall had retired to his son's house in Florida. Our paths hadn't crossed since the letter. I didn't anticipate they would. That was fine. That was more than fine. After the ceremony, my son walked over and stood beside me. Not performing anything, not managing an image, just standing there in the room we were both in. "I want to ask you something," he said. "I'm listening." "The Callaway Street building," he said, "the deed. Is it possible to earn it back?" I looked at him carefully. "Not the document," I said. "I'm not putting that back in your name." He absorbed that. "Okay. What I can do," I said, "is something different. I can bring you in as a partner in a new LLC, one that we build together, starting with one property. You learn how it works, the tenants, the maintenance decisions, the hard months when the furnace fails and 2 people are late on rent, and the repair bill comes in at the same time. You learn all of it. If you do, after 2 years, we talk about what comes next." He nodded slowly. "What would I have to do?" "Work," I said. "The real kind, not the kind people see." "I know what kind you mean," he said. "I've been learning. Saturday mornings," I said. "Laundromat, you keep showing up." "I will. And one more thing." He waited. "Call your grandmother," I said. "She's been trying to reach you for 6 weeks. She's 81 years old, and she doesn't have many 6-week spans left. Whatever she's calling about, it matters." He looked like I'd caught him in something. "I'll call her tonight." "Good. Then we'll talk about the LLC." That was 4 months ago. He calls his grandmother now, every Sunday. She told me last week that he started asking her questions about when I was young, about what our family was like before he was born, about the things I never talked about. She told me she doesn't know whether to be surprised or not. I told her to just answer his questions. He still comes on Saturday mornings. He's learned how to identify a bearing that's going, which machine pulls the most power during peak hours, and that the woman who comes in every Tuesday with the twin stroller prefers that someone hold the door because her hands are always full. He holds it now without being asked. That last part I noticed 3 weeks ago. I haven't mentioned it to him. There are things you watch for in a person when you want to know who they really are. Not the big moments, the speeches and the ceremonies and the envelopes accepted or declined. The small ones. The door held for someone whose hands are full. The quarters added quietly to someone else's wash. That's character. That's the thing I spent 30 years trying to give him without knowing if it had taken. Last week, I pulled out the filing cabinet and opened the folder labeled Callaway Street. I've started a new folder behind it. New LLC documentation. 2 names on the membership agreement, mine and his. It's not signed yet. I'm waiting until I'm sure he understands what he's signing. Not legally. I know he understands it legally. I mean the other way. The way you understand something when you've stayed long enough to see it through a hard month. When you've made a decision that cost you something and done it because it was right and not because someone was watching. I think we're getting close. The laundromat sign still buzzes every night. I can see it from my bedroom window. I've lived in this apartment for 19 years, and that sign has been on every night for all of them. Some people find neon signs annoying. The hum of them, the way they pull light into an otherwise dark street. I've always found it comforting. It means something is still open. Something is still running. That's not a small thing when you think about it. I started with a duplex and a library book and $38 in an account and a decision that everyone in my life said was wrong. I built 14 properties and a laundromat and a community health center that on its 3rd week of operation served 212 people who had nowhere else to go. I built it invisible. That was the only way it was going to get built. I don't need my son to understand all of it at once. I don't need Constance to understand it at all. I don't need the ceremony or the applause or the right table at the right event. I need the drain hose in Bay 3 to hold, and the LLC paperwork to get signed when it's ready, and the woman with the twin stroller to find the door open when she gets there on Tuesday. The rest takes care of itself. To anyone listening to this who has ever been walked past, looked through, underestimated because of the work you do, or the uniform you wear, or the address you come from, the work is not small. The work is the whole thing. Every shift you showed up for, every dollar you managed carefully, every decision you made in a quiet room that no one saw, that's not invisible. That's the foundation. I know because I poured mine for 30 years and it held. It's still holding. I've been thinking about what I would tell my younger self. The one standing in that kitchen in 1997 with $38 and a sleeping child down the hall. I think I'd tell her this. The years nobody sees are the ones that count the most. Not because suffering is noble. It isn't. And not because invisibility is a virtue. It's not. But because the decisions you make in quiet rooms with no audience, with nothing pushing you toward the right choice except your own judgment, those are the decisions that reveal who you actually are. Not who you perform, who you are. I made a lot of decisions in quiet rooms, the duplex on Marsh Road, the laundromat, the LLC I set up in 1999 that nobody asked about because nobody thought to ask. Each one was a choice made without applause, each one carried forward into the next. That's how I understand cause and effect now. Not as punishment and reward, the way children think of it, but as accumulation. Every honest choice accumulates. Every corner cut accumulates too. You end up living inside whatever you built, whether you meant to build it or not. My son built something in those years between childhood and the graduation dinner. He built a version of himself shaped around status, around the right appearances, around what other people's approval felt like when it landed. I watched it happen, and I told myself I was giving him space to become himself. That was only partly true. I was also afraid. Afraid that if I showed him what I'd built, it would change the thing between us into something transactional, something with a price tag. What I didn't account for was what my silence built in him. The assumption that my life was small, that the envelope deserved to sit next to a fork. That's on both of us. When he started coming to the laundromat on Saturday mornings, I wasn't watching for the big moments. I wasn't waiting to see if he'd say the right thing or have the right realization. I was watching for the small things. The door held for the woman with the stroller. The quarters added without a word. Those things can't be performed for long. Eventually, they either become real or they stop happening. He kept doing them. That told me what I needed to know. Constance never understood what I was doing with the Devereaux building. She thought it was retaliation. She was wrong. Retaliation would have felt like something. What I felt when I called June and told her to draft the conversion letters was something quieter than satisfaction. More like alignment. The building was finally going to do what a building should do, hold people up. That's what I want the work to mean. Not the accumulation of assets, the accumulation of things that hold people up. The duplex held up 2 families in 1998. The laundromat has held up this neighborhood for 14 years. The health center, on its 3rd week, served 212 people who needed somewhere to go. I think about Ruth Ann, the home health aide who sat in that exam room for the first time in years. I didn't build the health center for her specifically, but she's who I picture when I think about whether it was worth it. It was. My son is learning. I see it in the Saturdays, and the calls to his grandmother, and the way he asked to be part of the health center without making it about himself. He's not done learning. Neither am I. That's how it works when you're paying attention. You don't arrive somewhere and stop. You keep building. The deed is still unsigned. I'm not in a hurry. The right time will be obvious. It usually is if you're willing to wait for it. The laundromat sign is still buzzing outside my window. I still find it comforting.